Connection. I'm Mira Rubin here with you on Enlightened World Network. And today's topic is success and learning. And we talked this week about failure being a context or context bound, finite. And really, the same thing is true of success. So, today we're just going to dig in and see how we can create a context, an overarching context that enables us to have a richer experience of success. So, before we get started, let's just take a minute or two to get present and experience ourselves anchored into our physical. Let's take a deep breath in through your nose and hold it. And imagine clean, crisp oxygen flooding your lungs, flowing into your bloodstream, nourishing every cell, every organ. And as you exhale, exhale any tension, toxicity, negativity, stress. And now let's take another deep breath in through your nose and hold it. This time, imagine brilliant, bright light lighting you up from the inside out, electrifying and energizing every single cell in your body, all your molecules, all your electrons, just buzzing and connecting you with the world beyond. And as you exhale, exhale any tension, any fatigue, stress, negativity. And now let's just gently press our palms together, really softly. Rub your fingers against your palms. Feel the sensation in your fingertips, in the palms, and allow yourselves to become present right here, right now. Welcome, welcome. It's great to be here with you. Thank you so much for joining me. Again, it's always a delight. And we're talking today about success. And Maggie says hi. She's here to join us. And I, I want to talk about how we measure ourselves against fabricated criteria or fabricated markers. And we talked about this the other day when we were talking about failure and how the experience of failure often arises because we have had an idealized notion of how things should be or what we should be aspiring to or what we should be able to achieve. And the operative word here is should. Good morning, Roslyn. Great to have you here. As always, welcome, welcome. So, we're talking about success today and recognizing that success is a context. And when we measure ourselves against things, uh, oftentimes when we're measuring for success and failure, as arose in our conversation of the other day, it becomes clear that the criteria by which we evaluate success and failure is often not our own. It's often something that is imposed upon us by family or other outside influences. And when we become alert to these situations, then it's beholden to us to make a deeper assessment. Good morning, Suzanne. Wonderful to have you here. And good morning, Dido. Wonderful to have you here as well. And welcome to everybody else who's here joining us. So we're just talking about comparing ourselves to values or ideas that are expressed by others, imposed by others, whether it's family members or the culture itself. We often accept the values of the culture without really questioning them, and then judge ourselves based upon those values. Um, and also, not only just challenging ourselves based on those values, but often, good morning, Tammy, welcome, but often not even really knowing what those values or standards are. So when we were talking about failure the other day, uh, it was expressed by someone that they were judged by their father not to have been successful enough. And the thing is that when somebody imposes that umbrella kind of judgment on you, um, it might be something, especially if that's someone near and dear to you, that really impacts your heart in a profound and not necessarily positive way. So the thing that we don't automatically do is listen objectively. We listen emotionally. And if we were to listen to a statement or a judgment like that, good morning, Donna. Welcome, welcome. It's great to have you here. I don't think I've seen your name here before. We're delighted to have you joining us. Um, so what happens is that we don't think to question what the meaning is of success. So if, for instance, my parent judges me and says I'm not successful because I am not successful in my career. So what would that mean? What I get to do is to ask, what would it look like to be successful? What would it look like to be successful? And the reason that we get to ask that question is because whatever that person is judging or whatever the metrics are that they have for success may not have anything to do with the things that would allow you to experience yourself as successful. So if it's rising to a certain position within a company, uh, Maggie's all over the keyboard and chewing on wires this morning. She's very busy. So I'm having to monitor her a bit. Um, she, she's gotten a taste for electronics lately. Rosalind says, we can practice interim iterations of the outcome, want to learn what works and what doesn't work until metric is achieved. Well, what I'm talking about here, I agree with you 100%, Rosalind, that what we often call failure is really, it's failure and success are really feedback, feedback about what works and what doesn't work. And so my thinking here though is that we often accept these kinds of statements that are really quite generalized from others and internalize them without even knowing what the heck they're talking about, because maybe success to that person means that I make $1 million. Maybe success to that person means that I rise to the top of my company. Maybe success to that person means that I, um, who knows? Who knows? The thing is that we don't really know what somebody else's measure of success is, and what determines that success in their minds. And then we just adopt their notion of our success or our failure, internalize it, and we don't even have a definition for what success would look like. We don't even know for ourselves what success would look like. And so I think that we get to degeneralize these notions, and because success and failure are actually, if we look at a literal definition, they are contextually defined. So I can only measure success in the context of specific parameters, right? And when it's a generalization, there's no metric. There's only a reaction and an emotional experience. So Donna says, failure is just another stepping stone. Is I get another chance to be creative to make it work in another way. Exactly. So when we contextualize failure, we were talking the other day about Edison creating the light bulb and finding at least 200 different ways not to create a light bulb. So when we talk about failure typically, culturally, it has a, what's the word? It has a stigma to it, a pretty intense stigma that failure is wrong, failure is bad, failure makes us less than. Well, if we redefine failure as what works or what doesn't work, then we can recognize that really failure is feedback. So again, when there's an experience of something failing or failing, the important thing is to look at what's the context in which that failure occurred. And also, when we recognize that failure is contextually based, we get to create a new context. Failure and success are actually quite specific to a context. And being conscious of the context and not generalizing it out into everything. Like, I failed at this endeavor and I chose not to do it again, or to keep trying, or to find new iterations. So I can close the book on that and I can say, well, this endeavor was a failure. But then I can say, well, so years ago, I had a restaurant, and I ended up going bankrupt. I ended up closing the doors and going bankrupt, and it was extremely traumatic, and it was a massive experience of failure in my life. And my father helped to reinforce that, that it was a failure, and it shifted his way of being with me also, I think, to a great degree, in that not only was the restaurant a failure, but it generalized to me. And I generalized it to me as well. I'll take responsibility for that. So here's the thing. There was a lot about having that restaurant that was not a failure. We can say it was a failure because it ended up closing, and I ended up suffering the financial consequences of it. Um, I can look at different contexts where I can see I was successful. There were many successes in the context of having that restaurant. The other question is, what would have made that restaurant a success? What would have qualified it as a success? If I had limped along for 5 years, would it have been a success or a failure? If it had, how much would it have had to make in order for it to be a success? How much would I have had to sell it for in order for it to be a success? So do you see that there are all these different contexts within which we get to evaluate something? And those contexts make all the meaning. And I never, at that time, it didn't occur to me to ask the questions, well, what would have qualified it as a success? Because I think that there would be a lot of people who would say, even if the restaurant stayed for 5 years or 10 years or whatever, if I didn't have a certain level of income, that maybe that would have been perceived as a failure. So I think we just get to dig in more deeply. So Suzanne says, to my dad, success would have been titles and degrees in work life, not even the money, but the prestige. For me, success is more relationships and love. And Suzanne, good for you to be able to identify what this other person's metric was by which they were judging you. So titles and degrees. And so speaking of degrees, I know that there are a lot of people who have multiple PhDs, for example, who work at Starbucks, or who work at unglamorous type jobs. So what is it about the title or the degree that is valuable. So what is it underneath that title or degree? What does that represent? And maybe it means a certain level of intelligence, perhaps. Maybe it means a certain level of knowledge somehow. The thing is, why is that the value of success? So maybe, and I'm just playing with this, Suzanne, but maybe your dad had had his own issues about himself and his own intelligence or achievement or education, and therefore he was evaluating success based on that. Or maybe he who knows what the story is. But if we dig more deeply into understanding where these valuations come from, we can get a richer perspective on the context, and then we can evaluate it to see if it's a context that we shared. So in your case, Suzanne, you say success is more about relationships and love. And so you have a whole different context by which you evaluate success. And so I think we get to look at all of these pieces, all of these pieces together to determine how we can move forward more generously to ourselves and others in our lives. Suzanne says, I think it was status in society. He was from Argentina, and they had status in society, which he had to uphold. Interesting. So maybe his notion of success for you in terms of status, I'm presuming he imposed this on you, um, was in a way to keep you safe, to support you in having the easiest life you could have, because it was based on status. And by having status, it provided you with more opportunity, and he wanted the best for you, perhaps. So it's very, very interesting as we start to question these things that may otherwise just have been abstract and accepted blindly, so to speak. So when I think of creating a context that can provide greater support for us in our lives, we can look at success being learning. When we learn, then that maybe by definition can be a definition of success. So maybe in terms of, like with the restaurant, for me, for example, in terms of finances, it was a debacle. But in terms of so many other lessons that I learned, I succeeded in learning quite a number of lessons from that experience. And I became a whole lot wiser and savvy as a result of that. So when the invitation here is to create a broader context for ourselves that supports us in taking on challenges in where we may fail. It's 100% okay to be failing. And one of the things that I say, because all of this is feedback, right? Success and failure. Success is what works, failure is what doesn't work. When we take that feedback, we have the ability to then move forward more informed. So one of the things that I say is fail faster, fail forward. And what that means is keep going at it, keep trying things, keep experimenting, keep exploring, keep discovering. And by doing that, we then build our resiliency and our ability to just keep getting up. And so success is getting up one more time than you fell down, as far as I can tell. Suzanne says, I grew up in Germany. It was very different from his upbringing, and he rescinded that. That's beautiful, Suzanne. I'm thrilled to hear that. That he took back his judgment. So many of us really live at the effect of judgments that were imposed within our families of us, for many years in my family, because my ideas were quite different from my family culture. I was they Within my family, they kind of dismissed me as a flake, and dismissed my ideas and my perspectives, because and um, just uh, invalidated a lot of, or not even invalidated, just wouldn't even consider. There was no listening for my perspectives, because they really were very different from my family's orientation. This kind of stuff was not anything that had any space in my family. And yet I've been pursuing consciousness, conscious evolution and consciousness, and an understanding of the way things work in a conscious and other than conscious way for most of my life. And it was threatening to my family. And so it's as I evolved to the place where I took ownership of my own ideas, I haven't had an issue with that perception in my family anymore. So the beautiful lesson from all of that was for me to gain a strength and resilience and clarity, such that I could really truly presence myself to my own strength, my own, again, integrity, integration, wholeness. And as that evolved, the respect within my family for me evolved. And as I allowed myself not to be the expression of the what was projected on me. So when there was a part of me that believed I was a flake for a long time, because that's what my family was telling me. And when I really truly took ownership of the authority of the knowing that I have, then all of that disappeared. And I think that, the successes and failures and judgments of family and others that we experience in life is a big challenge, is one of our biggest challenges to evolve and move beyond, or move through, to really come to our own fullest expression. And so I was talking to someone yesterday about this whole idea of success and failure, and they quoted someone. I'm not sure who they quoted, but who the person that they quoted said, "There's only success and learning," and I like that, because to me, learning is also success. So it's how we integrate our experiences that can turn what looks like a failure, feedback of this doesn't work, to something that enriches us and serves us going forward, and serves us more richly. So I I I can't emphasize how important I believe this is to our ability to really embrace the opportunities in life, because so many of us don't embrace the possibility because of this fear of failure. And instead, if we can create a context that no matter what, we're going to get successes from this experience. And that context creates a context of winning. It creates a context of learning. It creates a context of success for ourselves, so that we can't really fail at life, and even if we have failures, and we can't be human beings without having quote unquote failures, in other words, feedback that something doesn't work, then there's always something that we are successful at, and that even in the midst of failure, there are successes. In other words, there are learnings, lessons that we can take from that will serve us down the road. And as an example, uh, let's say we do do a let's say we decide to do some trading on the market, and we have, nominal amount of money that we've invested, and we lose that money because we we were chasing a stock, and we chased it, and we invested that money as it was rising, and then all of a sudden the thing tanked and we lost all our money. And the reason we chased it was because we were afraid we'd miss out. And so that lesson was a failure or a feedback that, hey, maybe this isn't the best strategy. And maybe that lesson that we learned with that nominal amount of money ends up serving us in the future, in our future investments, because we have learned that that's not the greatest strategy, that maybe there's a better strategy to go about playing with this market. So, Suzanne says, yes, that's so me. I'm trying to get unstuck in the moment. Okay, so I have to go in a couple minutes, but I just want to share this with you because you said unstuck. And I've shared this before, but it's super, super, super powerful exercise, and I invite you to try it, because I did it with a friend a couple days ago, where we were doing some session work. There was a lot going on in their lives, and we did this exercise, and they were awed by how powerful it was. So if you're feeling stuck, what the exercise is to allow yourself to really experience the stuckness in your body and then embody it. So, for instance, this other person we were talking about an emotion, and the experience for them was this. And so here's what you do is you experience that in your physical, like you're creating a sculpture of yourself, and you just stay in that position until your body, not your mind, until your body decides to move, because you cannot stay in that position, really present deep in that position, physically or emotionally, indefinitely. You just can't. And so what happens is your body moves into what it would look like to the next degree of being unstuck. So, maybe you're like this, and you're being there, and it's like you're feeling all that emotion, and finally your body's just saying, I can't do this anymore. And maybe it goes like this. Who knows what it does? But what happens is that it's a transformation. And when I did this with this person, what they experienced was that, oh my gosh, when I was in that physical position, that's how I've been feeling. I've been feeling like closed in and contracted, and they saw that the physical expression was a really accurate and profound representation of that emotional state. And when you allow your body to move into the next state, it's very, look what she does. It's very, very freeing to allow yourself that transformation, because the body has a wisdom beyond our own intellectual knowing. The body knows a lot more than we give it credit for. So, Suzanne, I invite you to try that out and see if that makes a difference. If you come to some awareness around that, it's a really cool technique. I did not make it up. It was introduced to me through social. I think it's called social presencing theater. It was an exercise called Stuck. I wouldn't try it, Rosalind, while you're driving, because you really want to be able to have the full physical experience. So please don't do it while you're driving, because that's going to be more of a mental experience. And if it becomes a physical experience while you're driving, it could be really dangerous. So I do invite you to find some time. It doesn't have to take very long. It can be done in less than 5 minutes, which is really quite remarkable. And it is transformational and will provide you with a bunch of insight. So give it a shot and see what comes of it for you. So in that, on that note, I am going. Hi, Andrea. Welcome to joining us. It's great to have you here. Okay, thank you, Rosalind. You scared me there. So that's not an exercise for driving, but it is really, really profound, and it has huge potential to help you get unstuck. So I invite you to give that a shot, and I think that's going to be it for today. In the meantime, look at creating a context for yourself that is a context for success. And a context for success is that all learning, let's learn good lessons, but learning itself is success. So let's create that context for ourselves and enjoy. That was Maggie's tail in front of the camera. And enjoy the successes that you can create for yourself on a daily basis. So with that, lots of love. Looking forward to seeing you next time. I'm Mira Rubin here on the Core Connection every weekday morning at 9 a.m. Eastern. This is Maggie, who's especially feisty today. And I invite you to check out the other awesome programming in the community on Enlightened World Network. And until next time, I just am so grateful to spend this time with you.